Welcome, friends, to another exciting episode of A VGM Journey. And I'm your host, The Messenger. The track that we're playing in today's show is Funky HQ from the game Streets of Rage 4, and it was composed by Olivier Deriviere. 2021 is coming to a close, and what better way to send us off into 2022 with a pretty fun episode of A VGM Journey. I got some pretty nice tracks for you, lots of energy, but I think we're going to start things off with something a lot slower and a little weirder. This is coming from the game Gods. This is level 1, and it was composed by John Foxx. track that you just heard, that was Level 1 from the game Gods, and it was composed by John Foxx. Definitely a little bit of an odd track. And kind of just looking at gameplay real quickly, it's a somewhat fast-paced looking action platformer where you just go room to room looking for keys and treasures and throwing a bunch of stuff at some monsters. And that this game came out for a bunch of different computers and even made its way to the Super NES and the Genesis, which the version of this track I played was from the Genesis version. And I've actually just also found out that there was a remastered version of the game that actually came out in the last couple years for various systems like the Switch and PlayStation 4. So this might be something worth checking out. And the soundtrack, I don't think it's anything mind-blowing. And I do wonder if this soundtrack was composed with the sound program called Gems, which kind of has a bit of an infamous reputation. So a lot of soundtracks that use that didn't exactly sound the greatest. But I'm not going to hold it against this track. I think this track was kind of going for a bit of a weird, moody kind of atmosphere that I think it somewhat pulls off. I think we're going to pull a 180 in tone with this next track, and this is coming from Bowser's Fury. The track is Plessie Ride, and this was composed by Daisuke, Matsuoka, and James Phillipsen. That really fun track that you just listened to, that was Plessie Ride from the game Bowser's Fury, and it was composed by Daisuke Matsuoka and James Phillipsen. For whatever reason, it's hard to believe that Bowser's Fury came out in 2021. So it was a game that was packaged with the Switch re-release of Super Mario 3D World, where it kind of had this weird mix of gameplay from 3D World and Super Mario Odyssey, where you were in this open world and you had these different areas that you can go to, and you got to grab these things called cat shines. Because the big thing with Super Mario 3D World was the cat suit that you can get. So everything in Bowser's Fury was themed after cats for some reason, which I thought that was a bit odd, but doesn't matter too much. And I actually thought it was a lot of fun, and the soundtrack for it was really good, despite being kind of a side game. You had some really fun tracks like this one that I just played, and there was some really awesome rocking tracks whenever Bowser would pop up. So actually, I forgot to mention that in Bowser's Fury, Bowser gets corrupted by this goop. I guess that's what I'm going to call it. And he becomes like this giant kaiju monster, and he'll just randomly pop up and like everything just goes nuts. A huge storm starts brewing and you get this really rocking music. And I know that a lot of people, they're going to be talking about all kinds of different games as their favorite game of 2021. But I will say that Bowser's Fury, I think, was a nice little underrated gem. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it is definitely something that shouldn't be overlooked. I think we should go back in time quite a bit for this next track. And we're going to go all the way back to the Super Nintendo with this track from Toy Story. This is Red Alert, and it was composed by Allister Brimble. Alright, that track that you just heard, that was Red Alert from the game Toy Story, and it was composed by Allister Brimble. That was a pretty fun track, and to be honest, this game has been kind of popping up lately whenever I'm on YouTube, and that was actually the main reason why I'm playing this track on the show today. And I mean, it got so bad that I decided to sit and watch a long play of both the Genesis version and the Super Nintendo versions of the game. And if you're wondering what Toy Story is it's a I don't want to say it's totally a side scroller platformer game because yeah, some levels are like that, but you kind of find yourself doing all kinds of things level by level. So in one level, you could be escorting little green army men, and then on another level, you are driving an RC car and you're trying to hit Buzz Lightyear. I actually probably should mention that this game is based off of the movie of the same name, and that for the most part, you're playing as Woody, and you're just going through the plot of the movie. And I listened to quite a bit of the soundtrack, and yeah, there are some covers of some songs, which I think on the Super Nintendo version, I think was really well done, and it's not bad on the Genesis one. I just think it pales in comparison. But I will say that it is really odd that in the Super Nintendo version, You Got a Friend in Me was an unused song, which I always consider that to be like the main theme for Toy Story. And what was really cool about the Toy Story game was that it had graphics similar to Donkey Kong Country, which I'm not really too shocked by because they had the capability to do that kind of graphics at that time, and that movie was pretty groundbreaking at the time. I still think it holds up for the most part to this day. And I would think it would be a little odd if they went the 2D route for the game, but I don't think it would be a deal breaker. But hey, I think the graphics are in a similar style as the movies, so it's pretty faithful on that front. And now I'm talking about the movie too. So I will say that the game has a little bit of a reputation as being a pretty difficult game, which it seems like for a lot of those licensed games at that time, they were really trying to up the difficulty on purpose based off of trying to limit the rental market. So they didn't want kids beating a game in a weekend. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think I need to get that game and just play through it. So I think I'm up for that challenge. So now we're going to move on to this next track. And I was on another podcast pretty recently. It's called Idiotville. And I was talking about VGM Journey and talking about video games and my love for video game music. And they were asking me about some soundtracks that I really liked. And I mentioned Pictionary. And they were like, Pictionary? That's odd. And I'm like, oh yeah. Pictionary is a jam. So let's play a track from Pictionary. The track that we're going to go with is Drawing Game. And this was composed by Tim Follin. That track that you just heard, that was Drawing Game from the game Pictionary, and it was composed by Tim Follin. And that's going to just about do it for the show this week. If you like what you've been listening to, have your friends check out the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever podcatching service that you can think of. I'm more than likely going to be on there. You can email the show at vgmjourney@yahoo.com, and you could also check us out on Twitter at vgmjourney. We're going to end things off with one more track, and I think this is a really good one. This is coming from Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. This is No Flights Out, and it was composed by Jake Kaufman. Have a good week, and have a happy new year.